This Hangout on Air is live. Hello and welcome to Death at the Roguelike number 15. Holy crap. This time we're doing Dwarf Fortress. I am Rob Parker at Robot Parking on Twitter, and with me is Harrison Massey at I Am About Us on Twitter.
Hello. Putting the link out now on the social forums.
Yes.
All right.
So I guess, yeah, this week we're going to talk a little bit about Dwarf Fortress and a little bit about Lord of the Rings, or probably a lot about Lord of the Rings. As per last week, I'm looking a little bit at like narrative elements of Lord of the Rings that have been codified into game mechanics and structures in very odd and like kind of counterintuitive ways. Especially when you start looking at free or unlicensed adaptations of the lore, you really can't exactly directly refer to things from Lord of the Rings because Christopher Tolkien is apparently a monster and will just sue you.
Yeah.
So looking at that is an extra pressure that kind of impacts game design and the way you position your game and a bunch of other stuff. So we're looking at last week we looked at like actual roguelikes that explicitly played with Lord of the Rings stuff, including like Tales of Magill, which originally was like a very heavy-handed Tolkien-influenced thing, and then when they wanted to make a living off of it, they kind of had to change everything. Potentially for the worse, potentially for the better. I don't know. It's kind of up to your taste. So this is Slaves to Armok, God of Blood, Chapter 2, Dwarf Fortress. I've never played Chapter 1.
I've heard it's not really worth even looking at.
Yeah, that seems to be kind of what I've heard. But what it does, the appeal of Dwarf Fortress as we know it, is just it's almost its capability to procedurally generate stories and procedurally generate you talk a lot about Tolkien as maybe not a great prose writer, but he's very good at world building, and this game literally does that from the ground up every single time. And you wind up with these glorious, kind of absurd, kind of strange, kind of horrifying stories that are just kind of told by the game's absurd attention to detail at the sacrifice of all other things. So there's a lot of complicated systems. Anyway, we'll kind of walk through this. We're looking at Harrison's screen right now. Harrison, you haven't played Dwarf Fortress though, right?
I have never played Dwarf Fortress. This is going to go horribly. I've watched people play Dwarf Fortress. I know that you can build traps, and it's really easy for your dwarves to starve, or for one of them to go crazy and kill everyone.
Yeah. The tantrum spiral is a very huge threat, which is basically like one dwarf gets cranky, beats up another dwarf, or kills another dwarf, and that dwarf's friends get really upset, and then they start tantruming, and then they start hurting each other, and then it basically you just kind of lose control of the fortress. Surprisingly, it's not that difficult, or it is a bit difficult for dwarves to starve. I'm just really bad at feeding them. But the larger threat is if you are not able to make booze. They need a drink to get through the day, but we'll get into that anyways. If you want to go through the create a new world thing, and then we'll switch to mine, which
new world. Crap! I unmuted the stream on mine. Okay. Now that I'm focused on the width right window, so we're creating a new world. All right, we're loading everything. This is the alpha of Dwarf Fortress that has been in development for 10 years. All right. Escape. Okay, world size.
Yeah, just leave it as is.
Default. Okay.
You can twiddle a lot of these things. At one point in time, I wanted to have, I think, a long history or a very long history, and it just got incomprehensible. Like the code kind of fell apart. But as it stands here, like this will be pretty intense. But yeah, you can pick the number of beasts, of which there will be like these fell beasts that kind of exist in the cracks of the world, and you'll eventually kind of encounter them. But yeah, anyways, we'll get to that. The natural savagery. You can make this extremely difficult. I've read some long Let's Plays or whatever. The Boat Murders is the most famous one, which is where people would pass off the fortress after a year, and then write kind of a long form story about what they were doing, and yeah, it gets real silly. But you know, the starting settings are plenty. There's an incredible amount of depth to this game.
All right. Yes. Okay. So 250 years of history. Here's our map. The Age of Myth. History figures.
Historical figures. There are dead, and there's a variety of historical events. So essentially, what it's doing is just running a simulation on a bunch of different historical figures. It will create sort of monsters that will, you know, be created. So like Stream Friends is doing a similar thing right now, and I watched a bit of theirs today, and they were talking about how there's like 3 modes that you can play in Dwarf Fortress. There's Fortress mode, which is the default, like the general, that's what you come to Dwarf Fortress for. There's also Legends mode, and there's Adventure mode. Adventure mode actually behaves very much like a standard roguelike, and surprisingly, we're not actually going to even touch that one this week because there's just too much depth in Fortress mode, and we're gonna touch a little bit on Legends mode. Legend mode is basically, here is a wiki based on this world that this set of interlocking algorithms has created, and so they were talking about how they played Adventure mode, they killed some kind of vampire creature in Adventure mode, and then they went to Legends mode and then found that creature's name and then read up on its history up until the point that they killed it.
Huh.
And it was like they found out that it was like she was born a female human. She witnessed a battle. She, I think, invoked a warlock's name or something like that and was cursed with vampirism. Was really bad at being a vampire, like kept ambushing people, but then having to run away, and like they wound up fighting her off. So she got extremely good at butchering vermin, which basically meant she was starving and lived off of like rodents rather than kill people.
Wow.
And then they showed up and murdered her.
That's kind of depressing.
Yeah, there's plenty of really strange stories of, you know, a dwarven child gets abducted and winds up living inside of a goblin stronghold, and then eventually winds up the leader of these goblins, and kind of sorts like forging peace or something like that with other dwarven civilizations, or waging war on them or whatever. So this process takes a fair bit of time. I think
we're year 145 now.
Yeah. And then at the top of the screen, you'll see there's the Elven Forest Retreat of Imofie? The Jungle of Lights. So I think the forest is sort of the general. The top one is like the general civilization, or like the term for the sort of civilization that's living there, and then the Jungle of Lights is the general area, and that stuff is all procedurally handled. This has actually gone on to inspire a lot of other games that are perhaps less crazy. The one complaint about Dwarf Fortress is that its interface is completely obtuse. And actually, right now, what we're seeing on Harrison's screen is it's running the Dwarf Fortress Starter Pack.
Yeah, Dwarf Fortress Starter Pack. So it comes with some nicer tile sets than the kind of Unicode one that's that comes default. It's got a configuration tool. It's got some other niceties, just for basically making your Dwarf Fortress experience a more pleasant one. Although, being used to looking at NetHack, I imagine I could acclimate to the fully text-based interface.
I've tried a couple times. It's really hard because there are so many different elements that you need to keep track of that even with the tile set, I'm having trouble keeping up with what's happening at any given time.
Yeah, are these gravestones on my screen around here?
I honestly couldn't tell you. It looks like it could be, yeah. Sometimes the tile set is good at showing what it's showing, and then other times those could just be like buildings or ruins.
Yeah, there's like a carpet rolled up carpet here. I guess that's treasure.
I know the brown lines are either roads or walls. Probably roads, if I had to guess. And I know the little like white archways I think are doorways or yeah. Okay, you can probably just. Oh, is it still? Yeah,
It's
town of.
we're in the human town of Gamoro. By the way, we are in Alabecamade, the momentous realms.
Yeah.
It's gonna be fun just trying to pronounce. Make an entire game just out of trying to pronounce stuff from Dwarf Fortress.
Well, and also like one of the things that they pick up on from Tolkien is the multiple names for everything. So when you start a new fortress, it will have some kind of gibberish sounding name, and then that will have like some other translation in the common tongue. So that's why Boat Murdered is what it was called. Like Boat Murdered was there's actually some other dwarven name for it, but then when it translated to the common tongue, it was roughly known as Boat Murdered. And then there's like oil something. What? Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of really fascinating, kind of silly names that have come out of this game. But it really does touch on like the multi-voiced aspect of it. So like a lot of things have different names. Dwarves will eventually, as they do certain tasks, they may pick up nicknames. If, for example, an animal is being particularly like a big nuisance and killing a lot of dwarves, it will also get a nickname, and it may get multiple nicknames. And that happened in Boat Murdered as well. Like they had a lot of very violent elephants in that game. I don't know why, but the elephants, a lot of them wound up with a variety of different nicknames. Okay, here we go.
Elements are like vicious. They hold grudges.
Yeah.
All right.
The Strapping Island, the lonely jungles.
Yeah. Okay, this is the problematic ocean. So this is.
Oh yeah, you can move around, and
this is where all the.
This is where graduate students come around, the problematic ocean, because everything is problematic.
Let's see. We've got continent of wire, the desert of extricating, hills of war. Okay, we can find out what these blue lines are.
Well, and the crazy thing is like when your little cursor, your little yellow X that's floating around there, that kind of selects an area that it kind of zooms in on and is still a gigantic area, and that's like some tiny fraction of this world that what you'll see has like an incredible amount of backstory and lore just kind of hidden in it, which is it's really intense. There's a really phenomenal article on Polygon about all it is about this aspect, the world building algorithms, and I mean they have things in there that kind of handle weather and like weather patterns and caravan movements and stuff like that. Like if you wind up finding when caravans will occasionally show up to your fortress, they will have something they will have items that like were basically created in their land. And then when you go into adventure mode and you find artifacts and stuff like that, like those are things that this game simulated their construction, which is really crazy when you start going down that path.
So am I picking a starting place, or am I just looking around?
You can. Yeah. Why don't we at least like get to the strike the earth message, and then we'll switch to mine. The equivalent of fast forwarding 10 hours. Which, by the way, yeah, like Dwarf Fortress is absolutely for the people who have far more time than money, because it's free. It's free to download. It's free to do with as you will, but it takes a long time to understand its systems, and it takes a long time to get anywhere. Like it is a very slow burn, but kind of learning and getting a handle on all of, like just even some of its aspects is kind of where that pleasure lies, which is a little bit different, I think, from certain games where you know. I think like it's a similar tradition, I guess, to like Dark Souls, where part of the pleasure of that game is not knowing what you're doing. Okay, so yeah, you generated your world, you can start playing, and when you go to start playing, you'll have 3 different modes. Once you pick one, you're kind of locked into it. So if you pick Dwarf Fortress, which is the fortress mode, you would then have to like retire your fortress and back all the way out of it to go into Legends mode. But the cool part is that it then like you can build multiple fortresses in the same world, and the legend, if you were to like go into Legends mode or something like that after you've retired a fortress, you can see how that stuff goes. So the characters that are in your fortress will then become historical figures, and any fell beasts you encounter, you'll get a sense of how their lives went on after you abandon your fortress.
Okay, so we get to pick a location now.
Yeah. So on the right there, you'll see like clay, deep soil, shallow metal, deep metal, flux stone layer. Those are all really good things to have on hand. You want to avoid anything with aquifer, because essentially aquifer is like one entire area that's almost entirely like one Z level of the ground. Like when you start digging underground, it's mostly water. At which point you can hypothetically flood your entire fortress if you tunnel into it. Mostly just because of the way the physics work. Which, I mean, I've seen people like flood hell, which has become a standard trope. If you ever play Terraria, most people would have like a layer of water as they were digging down, because usually at the bottom there's lava, and you don't want to fall into the lava, so there'd be like you drop that and it would create obsidian. It's a similar approach in Dwarf Fortress. Well, depends on what kind of life you want to lead. I've seen some people make really incredibly complicated things. I am not quite at that level. I can barely feed my dwarves.
You can search for.
Yeah. Yes, you can toggle those settings. Yeah, you can aim for a temperate zone, which makes it a little bit easier to gather plants and stuff like that. You don't necessarily want a lot of deep soil, because it means you're just digging down level after level trying to get to stone and metals. Ideally, you don't really want just deep metal, because so like aquifer is kind of the worst. Like there are people who will seek that out and.
So we got little soil, shallow metal, deep metal, a flux stone layer, and clay. Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, that's a pretty good starting point.
All right.
It doesn't really say an awful lot about what is it? The critter carp, the freckle of slowing, is the name of the brook that's there.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, hypothetically, you could fish.
I like that. You sure you want to embark here? This is your only warning. Yes.
So,
if I can play now.
Prepare for the journey carefully.
Hey.
Discipline, simple start. So yeah, this is you can pick the certain things you want to bring with you. Ideally, you probably want a couple chickens, you want a couple cats, a few other things. You want to bring at least 2 picks. You want to bring like some experienced miners. Like I was really foolish with mine, and I did not. I just went with whatever the game decided to give me, and now my fortress is starving to death. So.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna make him a proficient miner.
The one upside is that the starter pack also includes pre-built things.
Yeah, I could have clicked one of those. But.
Yeah, the pre-built ones tend to favor. You can kind of it's built by people who are Dwarf Fortress veterans.
Okay, so you say I need a miner, I need a woodcutter.
Yeah, you need a miner, you need a woodcutter. Actually, fewer woodcutters than you'd expect. The wood output, like the way that they did a revamp with the latest patch, I think, with the way that trees grow. So now trees like occupy multiple Z levels, which Z levels are it's a flat game, but you're then going back and forth between levels. It's a bit to wrap your head around. But the trees now take up like a significant amount of space, and occupy multiple Z levels, which also means that when you cut them down, you get a ton of wood, which is great. Now, if only collecting plants was as viable for food as it used to be.
Let's see. I think I've got a brewer now. I need to cook.
Yeah, you need a brewer. You probably don't really need a cook. You may need a farmer.
Okay. Farmer.
Herbalist. Mason.
Farmer. I don't see farmer.
You went past it.
Oh. No, I still don't see farmer. Where, like, is it near the top?
Brewer, Weaver. Maybe I thought Weaver was farmer.
I think you thought Weaver was farmer. I don't see farmer anywhere. There's a beekeeper. There's a
beekeeper. Which apparently beekeeping is a big thing in Dwarf Fortress, which I don't know.
Axe worker, gem setter, gem cutter. I
don't know. Just
who around here makes food besides a cook?
I guess cook is probably your best bet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you got points in the lower right corner down there where that, every time you bump up one of those abilities, it kind of.
Okay, you are a carpenter, probably.
So there was actually like an article a while ago that had like, here is the complete noob's walkthrough of Dwarf Fortress. There's basically a very, very old version of it. They set it up in such a way that like, download this file, you have exactly the same fortress as the one that walk you through.
I've seen that before.
Yeah. The problem is that some of its strategies just don't work, and the primary one was around that time they added the need to have like mud to build a farm plot, which meant that you had to flood a certain area, and it was just a whole bunch. It was a huge amount of other stuff that you kind of had to do. Whereas in that game, it was actually reasonably easy to feed your dwarves. You could just send someone out to go and gather plants, and then build a plot outside, and they would be able to build stuff.
Okay, what was it you saying I needed? Animal and specialized?
You want a male and female cat. So if you go up.
Okay, I have 2 cats. Is this just you pushing your love of cats on me?
No, they get rid of vermin. The problem is that cats will eventually take over your fortress, so you may need to slaughter them occasionally. And you want some chickens. Yeah. I don't know if it's still the case, but they've referred to it as like the catpocalypse, where essentially the cats just breed and they don't get thinned out at all ever, because they're basically apex predators, and so therefore they just breed and breed and breed and breed and breed, and it takes up so many processes that the frame rate just takes a dive. And that's kind of the weird thing is like Dwarf Fortress is not a graphically intensive game for a reason, because a lot of the stuff is churning under the hood to kind of keep it running, and it's also been the ramshackle development of like 2 people over the better part of 10 years. So right. I don't imagine it's particularly well optimized.
All right. Be good?
Yeah, sure.
All right. This is going to end horribly. Embark.
Yep.
I said embark.
It's embarking. Give it a minute. Did you press E?
Okay, it's not. Yeah, it's not responding. I've got a little.
Yeah, it'll do that. Yep, there you go. Hey. You've arrived after a long journey from the mountain homes into the forbidding wilderness beyond your harsh trek
has finally ended. Your party of 7 is about to make an outpost. For the glory of all. This is the Gesh.
Yep. Yep, nailed it.
Awesome. It's fantasy, so we can pronounce it however we want. There are almost no supplies left, but with stout labor comes sustenance. Whether by bolt, plow, or hook, provide for your dwarves. You are expecting a supply caravan just before winter entombs you, but it is spring now. Enough time to delve secure lodgings ere the grizzly bears get hungry. New chapter of Dwarven history begins here at this place. Od, Odger,
Odgert Yeah.
Ogderberguth, mob crafted.
Nice.
Strike the earth.
Strike the earth.
And it's black. And
yeah, it will occasionally just like, I don't know if this is going to crash or not. And then it kind of will eventually pop up.
In the meantime.
Yeah, so let's flash forward some 10 or 11
Martha Stewart style. After this fortress has been baking for 10 hours, this is what you'll get. Yeah.
All right. So this is my screen. I have been doing very poorly because I did not plan this well at all. I just hit the random embark, give me whatever you got, and let's do this. That was not really my intent. I was hoping to have like a fully fleshed out and perfectly, at least sustainable dwarf fortress, and then we could then destroy it. Instead, I have not planned well for food, mostly through my own gross misunderstandings of how to do food in Dwarf Fortress, and therefore I have just been desperately trying to dig to hell before my fortress falls apart. So anyways, I have discovered raw adamantine. Praise the miners. So
can you eat that?
No, you cannot eat adamantine. So we talk a little bit about, like, you know, there have been some studies that talk about the mines of Moria as sort of becoming a proto-dungeon, like a proto-dungeon experience for Dungeons and Dragons, where you have, you know, you're encountering these progressively more difficult foes, and then you hit the boss monster, which is the Balrog, and then he drags Gandalf to hell, or, well, into the cracks of the earth. And he's just, like, the Balrog is kind of one of these fell beasts that existed long before time, and kind of climbed out of the cracks of the earth thanks to Durin, which is why another name for the Balrog is Durin's Bane. And Durin was kind of like the sort of the god leader of the dwarves. He kind of just woke up of his own accord in the mountains and decided, we're going to start digging. And so adamantine is basically Dwarf Fortress's mithril, which is what sent the dwarves in the mines of Moria deep into the cracks of the earth. They were mining more and more mithril because it was super powerful stuff, and it was the thing that saves Frodo from that troll spear and whatever. And so that metaphor of just sort of greed begetting horrible, horrible, unthinkable terrors is very much articulated in Dwarf Fortress. There's no win state, really. Win state is like if you have a very balanced fortress, but at a certain point something's going to go real wrong. I had 2 migrants workers show up, for example, and we'll see if we can find them. And they were married, and then the wife had a miscarriage, and I couldn't figure out why one of the dwarves was just throwing tantrums. And apparently that was because he had to endure his wife's miscarriage and was just like beside himself the entire time. It didn't help that he was also beginning to starve to death. So
I can imagine now.
Yeah, he's beaten up some other people, but after he got into a fist fight with someone, he was ecstatic because he got into a fist fight. So anyways, raw adamantine. So Dwarf Fortress is really hard to explain quickly. You'll see my X moving around. On the right, there's sort of a description of what I'm looking at. So there's a muddy, sparse floor fungus and a pile of mud. There's a tunnel tube trunk, which is a certain... So let's see what this gentleman, Lobram Tatcoal, is saying. So this will take you to a screen. You can kind of take a look at a variety of different objects, but in this case, I can view his thoughts and preferences, his relationships, and I can customize him. I can rename his... I think I can just give him a different name if I want, but... So he's got his 2 deities listed, Tithleth and Asmel Saziratur Teshkad Id. And they're on friendly terms with Avaz, the tanner, Tirist, the mason, Domas, the militia commander, and Eater the Spinner, who is, if I recall correctly, the one who is cranky. I can also just go enter and see this person's thoughts and preferences, and then you get this real weird wall of text. And this is the reason why it looks this way is largely to do with the fact that it's filtered through a tile set, so the various letters are sometimes being taken over by certain characters. So Lobram Tatcole has been very unhappy lately. She slept in a good bedroom recently, because I make a point of giving them good bedrooms. She was forced to eat vermin to survive lately. She has been tired lately. She has witnessed death. She has complained of thirst lately. She has been starving lately. She has been complained of hunger lately. She has complained of the nasty water lately. She has been satisfied at work lately. She was disgusted by miasma lately.
But
so,
it's
if there is a dead body or a chunk of flesh that is left around, it will generate a miasma, which is this like puffs of pink miasma, essentially puffs of pink smoke that make the dwarves very unhappy, and it's so hard to get rid of, and it depresses everyone. So she's a dubious worshipper of Tithleth. I imagine that dubiousness is a recent development, and a faithful worshipper of Asmel, the Prince of Rocks. She's a citizen of the Relic of Splashing. She's a member of the Fenced Relic. She arrived at Sazirider on the Second Timber in the year 250. She is 62 years old, born in the first of limestone in the year 188. She is short, her nose bridge is incredibly concave, her slightly wide-set gold eyes are round, her slightly hooked nose is narrow, her short hair is neatly combed, her head is somewhat narrow, her ears are somewhat tall, her eyebrows are somewhat high, her hair is burnt sienna, her skin is pink. She is quite susceptible to disease. Dwarves will have certain preferences, like they like certain things. So she likes chert, lay pewter, clear diamond, chimpanzee tooth, bolts, floodgates, and rings. When possible, she prefers to consume giant ostrich, apple cider, and long-limbed flower. She absolutely detests lizards. She has an iron will, a very good feel for social relationships, and an ability to read emotions fairly well, but she has meager creativity. So certain dwarves, you can, for example, like chain an animal they like up in their room, and because they like that animal, they'll see it all the time, and it'll lift their spirits every time they go to sleep. Like others in her culture, she holds crafts dwarfship to the highest ideals and celebrates talented artisans and their masterworks. She has a great deal of respect for the law. She greatly prizes loyalty, values family, greatly sees friendship as one of the finer things in life. She's blah 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 blah. She's personally somewhat disgusted by romance and finds the pursuit of skill mastery off-putting.
Wasn't she married?
Sorry?
Isn't she married?
I don't know. No, she's not. She's great work of art. She almost never feels discouraged. She's only rarely tries to assert herself in conversation. She prefers that everyone lives harmoniously as possible. She's moved by art and natural beauty. She's very humble. She doesn't handle stress well. She rarely speaks when she's exasperated. She needs alcohol to get through the working day. She's getting used to tragedy. A short, sturdy creature fond of drink and industry. The caveat that they need alcohol to get through the working day is there for all of the dwarves. She is getting used to tragedy is a new development. Basically, just it like illustrates her quality of life, which is right now really terrible.
Lovely.
Yeah. So all of this is essentially an underground cavern I have located. By digging into the ground. You'll see on the right some numbers, maybe. Top and bottom of this thing, those indicate your Z level, and I have been digging very, very deeply, so right now it's... There we go. So this is the surface. Here we go. This is the entrance to my dwarf fortress. So... right here, I have some traps to cover my doorway. You can pause the game and explore because there's so many things that you need to kind of keep track of and issue orders for.
And you can move things forward one step at a time. That sounds familiar.
So the black area here is just the mountain that I have not dug into. The white is the walls, and then these are certain areas that have been. They I think were once full of water, and then I drained them because over here is various plots of farmland that I tried to create desperately and did not create in time. It appears that there's a dead body here. This is Katten Geshudshed's corpse. I don't remember someone dying. I wonder if that's the miscarriage. Oh, never mind. I guess people died. So yeah, things are not
People
going.
usually don't have spatters of blood from starvation.
Yeah, I get the feeling that there were some fights. Gray water buffalo bull skeleton, gray horse skeleton. Okay, so apparently they've found and killed some water buffalo and horses, which I don't remember telling them to do. But who knows? They've been hungry for a while. This is a trade depot. Occasionally, a trade caravan will come through, and they'll have things from other lands. You can buy seeds from them. They'll sometimes have directives. The big one is the elves. They get really pissed off if you cut down trees. And if you continue to cut down trees, like at a certain point, they will say, like, you've cut down a lot of trees last quarter or whatever. Don't cut down any more. And if you do, or you like cut down a whole bunch of trees, they will come back and declare war on you. And so it's not uncommon to have elves come and attack you at the same time that you get like a goblin invasion, which goblin invasions happen quite frequently. I'm not sure, like I've read some stories of people being on friendly terms with goblins, but it's not a thing that I've encountered very frequently. For the most part, goblins just send a bunch of people, and if you read the story for Boat Murder, they actually engineered a thing that pumped magma up from the depths of the earth, and they could flick a switch, and it would just flood the entire area in front of the fortress with magma. So whenever goblins showed up, they would just murder them with magma and then wait until it dried up and then go and retrieve whatever was out there. And I think that led to some trouble because they got into fights with other civilizations and did the same thing to kill them. And it just, like, no one liked them because they were just this monstrous, burnt-out collective of terrible, terrible dwarves. So we've got a bunch of guys hanging out up here. We've got Cattle Dokulovich, trader. Godin. There's some alpaca wool. There's some clothing hanging out there. There's Errol. Oh, this guy's been real grumpy lately. Yeah. She's 76 years old. She's not getting used to tragedy, so good for her. Okay, so this is the next level, and the way that you kind of navigate between levels is the same way that you would navigate between levels in a roguelike, which is the HTML bracket things, the pointed brackets. The wood basket there for no reason. So I set up some rudimentary beds when I first got here because people were just sleeping on the ground. Here's one of my miners probably running off to go and find some vermin to kill. And this area, such as it is, the problem is right now this is a very sandy area, so the tile set is trying to display floor fungus, cave moss, sand cavern floor, and these are all different icons, which means that they are all different characters. Young fungi wood is growing there. When you get more into the stone areas, it's a little bit more uniform, but right now this looks really chaotic. But there's also a wood furnace here, and usually like workshops will take up about 9 spaces with various entrances and exits. There's a mechanics workshop, and those will build trap mechanisms and a whole bunch of other stuff. There's a carpenter's wood shop, which you need to make beds and cages. You need a still to make to add various tasks. Right now, I don't have any things that I can make alcohol from because even though I've had people out extracting from, oops, oh that's why, extracting or collecting plants, it's not really going so well for me. Those X's on the left here are stairs up and down. This is...
They're not angle brackets?
Sorry?
They're not angle brackets?
Oh, what? No, they are not angle brackets, even though that's technically what I'm using to navigate between the floors. So here is my dining room.
What is this?
There have been some real bad business going on here where someone killed a stray dog, or 2 stray dogs, and just kind of left them there. Just kind of unfortunate. There's a very depressed carpenter. It looks like someone broke some of the tables. There's a butcher shop in here, and this is where my finished food should be, and it's mostly just empty barrels. Down here is where my dwarves basically sleep. And I've assigned various beds. You can see the current owner on the right. And if there are 2 dwarves that are a couple, such as with Eater, Likats, Keshak, the spinner, and Domas Bardoms Manzin, the militia commander, they just share the bed, which is kind of cool. Because there's a lot that this game does not do for you, so any other thing that it does do for you, then that's great. One of my favorite things about Dwarf Fortress is that as your fortress kind of progresses, it builds its own history. It has a very fascinating way of dealing with events that have happened either outside of your, like in the world, that have been passed into this civilization during that process that we showed with Harrison's screen, but also events that happen within your own fortress. The problem is that the mine has not really lasted long enough to collect any memories of its own, unless this guy has decided to draw some pictures of people starving. But you can basically you can set dwarves to go and smooth the stone and then engrave things, and depending on how skilled they are at engraving, it'll be more or less detailed. So, for example, Godin Erith Kudist basically just did a finely designed image of a cabbage. But they... Oh, this is a different... was this done by... Oh, yeah, this is done by Godin. And this is far more... Either they hit a critical or something like that. This is far more detailed. And this is the image of Eru, Benchblaze, the elf, and Bax Hatred Arm, the goblin. Bax Hatred Arm is striking Benchblaze, the goblin. Bax Hatred Arm in the Yellow Forest in the midsummer of 41 during Stota Struck, the Singed Battles. And this is a different battle. Kostrok, the Ignited Battles. And again, it's the Yellow Forests. Engraved on the wall is a superiorly designed image of Toad Fortunisons, the goblin, and a gorilla.
It's Fortunisons.
Gorilla is striking down.
Compound word, Rob.
Oh, Fortunisons. There we go. Oh God. I just wanted to know what's going on with the gorilla, and apparently it's getting struck. Fortune Sins is getting struck down by a gorilla in Seed Glacier in the Yellow Forest in the late winter of 181 during the Scorching Sieges. Yeah, so you can see how this gets real.
If you want to switch back to my screen, I'm still trying to freaking figure out how to dig.
Right. Yeah, the one thing that I'm not talking about is engraved on the wall is an image of a dwarf by tourist Kavishbar. Thank you.
Original.
Yeah. Of cabbages. So for some reason...
You guys suck. Your dwarves suck. They need to go art not sucking classes.
One of the recurring jokes in Boat Murdered was how frequently these, the people, it was a dining room, and it was just festooned with images of elephants beating the shit out of dwarves. And they were just like, people are trying to eat in here. What are you doing? So it's very similar to Dungeon Keeper, where like you'll have these creatures that are kind of wandering around this dungeon, and they kind of have their own thoughts and feelings of their own, and they kind of go about their own business. And at a certain point, you kind of just lose control of them. They kind of go and do their own thing. Let's see, is this Godin? No, this is Tirist. I don't know where Godin went. I hope Godin's still alive. Sleeping.
Oh, I have to go over to this mountain. I see. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Tantrums, and so you'll just get like reports occasionally. Oh, so yeah, there's someone who just straight up died. The weather has cleared. So this is when I was like all the yellow text that's showing up there is when I was just digging like mad because I was running out of food. And so occasionally you'll get migrants, which is usually a bad thing if you are not right on your game, because oh yeah, this is my finished goods pile right here. So you can see that there's like rock dolls that I've crafted and a bunch of other stuff. Occasionally dwarves will be seized by a oh, there we go. So, I mean, like, everything has its own description, and depending on the skills of the dwarf that makes the item, it will have more or less detail. So this item is an image of Nunok the Velvety Lace, the deity of art and beauty, depicted as a female dwarf and dwarves in chalk by Kulset Ducrimril. The dwarves are prostrating themselves before Nunok the Velvety Lace. This is a chalk amulet, so clearly this was a journeyman, like a project. So yeah, it's kind of very similar. I feel like I get the same vibe going through this that I do going through the appendices of Return of the King, in terms of just this weird, like, they capture that tone, that sort of like almost biblical tone that Tolkien clearly, this was the story that Tolkien wanted to tell, but instead he had to tell this stupid story about this ring. And you can see that a lot in the Silmarillion. Like he really wanted to just tell these epic stories and create these incredible mythologies. So this is a very lengthy staircase that is going down and down into the world. And yeah. Ideally, I'd love to be able to get deep enough to encounter a fell beast. I'm not sure if I will necessarily be able to do that, because at a certain point everybody's starving and everybody's cranky.
Are you talking about yourself at this point, or are you talking about the dwarves?
Both. This is the two X's there indicate that I've set a job to be done, and the previous staircase is a warm, rough-hewn marble wall, which means that there's magma on the other side of it, which is why they don't want to dig. I don't know. I'm not confident that I'm going to get a miner back down there. This is unfortunate. But have no fear, because it's already 9 o'clock. We're going to retire this fortress for the time being. Really retire, all active states will be deleted. The fortress will become part of the world. You may reassume control later, but the circumstances will not necessarily be as you leave them now.
Basically, your dwarves are going to go off and do their own thing and potentially ruin everything.
Yeah, which, I mean, at this point, they are, the fortress is settled into the rhythm of day-to-day living beyond your meticulous concern, which is probably the best thing for them right now. Another tool that you may want to look into, in addition to the starter pack, is Dwarf Therapist, which basically just displays all the different dwarves. You can kind of, like, when you have Dwarf Fortress running, it'll just connect to it and then read the list of dwarves. And you can more easily manage the tasks and the labor, like the jobs that you have set for them. All right. So let's go into Legends mode. And there's a whole other, like, I'm gonna keep playing in this world, and maybe we'll come back and do a proper adventure mode, because I've not really fiddled with that. So this is Legends mode. You can set it so that it doesn't show all of the things. That's what it means by historical events left to discover. But I set it so that they would all just be revealed. Apparently, I can export the map and all that stuff if I really want to. There's a variety of different structures I can take a look at. The first age of Myth, the first age of Legends, the second age of Myth, the second age of Legends, the third age of Myth, Age of Heroes. The Age of Heroes was a time when the last of the powers fought their final battles. In 190, the elf Futace Fangseers became the druid of the Smooth Twig. In 190, the elf Indala Styled Pointed became the druid of the Crazed Music of Gloves. There's a kind of beautiful poetry sometimes to this. Like, and other times it's just kind of weird. But all of this stuff is completely specific to this instance of my game. If we were to do this for Harrison's world, it would be completely different. And I can go in more detail.
Yours is probably immensely more interesting though, because you've actually been doing things. Whereas
let's do the. So this is the Scraped Assault. So it shows you on the right, where on the map this occurred. The attacker was victorious. It was 1037, mostly humans, 339 losses, and then mostly elves were all killed. And so then it talks about all these different attacks. Molten conflict was waged by the Confederation of Universes on the Crazed Music of Gloves. The most significant cause for the conflict was a dispute over the devouring of the bodies of sapient beings.
Gross.
This is incredible. Like, that. I don't know. That's the thing, is like, this is just a tiny fragment, and this is so much text here. You can go into historical figures, sites, artifacts. All right, let's go to historical figures. Bronze Colossus. So the historical figures, at a certain point, is mostly monsters. Let's go with one that has like a nickname. Go with Merc of Holes.
Of course.
The Merc of Holes was a forgotten beast. It was the only one of its kind, a gigantic one-eyed louse.
Very gross.
It has a long swinging trunk, and it is slavering. Its slate-gray exoskeleton is wrinkled. Beware its poisonous sting. The Merc was associated with water, thraldom, and caverns. In a time before time, the Merc began wandering the depths of the world.
So this is
sure
the
phrase "in a time before time" shows up a fair bit in the Silmarillion. Okay, here we've got a much longer story here. The thing with Forgotten Beasts is that they kind of retreat into the belly of the world. And what I was really hoping to do before I kind of retired my fortress was dig deep enough to encounter one, because those things usually basically wipe your entire fortress out, because they just come up from the depths of the world. And if you dig deep enough, you eventually, the spoiler warning, you hit hell, and it is literally filled with countless demons. And it's just an endless stream of demons coming up through the ground. The upside is that you get so much adamantine getting there. You eventually find these tubes of adamantine where you just mine straight through them all the way down, and you just basically, if you have a working forge and all that stuff, everybody is decked out with phenomenal weapons, so they can kind of hold their own for a little bit, but eventually, you start losing warriors, their loved ones start going crazy and throwing temper tantrums. At a certain point, your food production falls apart, and then people kind of go crazy.
Your dwarves are not doomed, guy.
So Crabbirth, the Grisly Pain, was a rock. He's one of the only ones of his kind. Crabbirth was associated with hunting, the wind, and the sky. He settled in the Tower of Prophecy in the first year.
Pissed off a whole bunch of people.
He became an enemy of the Hollow Waves and the Wilted Sheen. He attacked the elf Milfava Beroils.
Beroils?
Yeah. In the late winter, Crabbirth fought with the elf Beroils. While defeated, the latter escaped unscathed.
Stole a bracelet, apparently.
Late winter of 1, a date palmwood bracelet was stolen from Yell's Rains by Crabbirth. In the mid-autumn of 5, Crabbirth became an enemy of the Responsible Society.
You've met some people. You've messed up when you're an enemy of the Responsible Society. They don't.
Crabbirth apparently decided to start eating their dogs and sows, and then I guess stealing their cow horn amulets.
I don't know. Boat matches could have been one of its other enemies. And it's got
Crabbirth
a lot of enemies.
Is basically like a smog, essentially. Whoa! In the early spring of 22, Crabbirth devoured ostrich cock of the Imperial Ivy in Glisten Mothers. Which that's
in the early spring of 25, Crabbirth became the enemy of the group of competition. Another bunch of people you don't want to anger.
The enjoyable gloss is another clearly they selected words to throw into this salad that are going to make things sound really funny. But it adds an incredible amount of charm to it. And then at the end, you've got related enemies, and it's got 6 notable kills and 43 other kills.
And 6 people and a bunch of animals.
Yeah. I don't know. Oh, here we go. We've got a forgotten beast that died inexplicably. Irung Shore Phantoms, the mangy lust of hags, was a forgotten beast. It was the only one of its kind, a towering eyeless shrimp. It has 3 broad horns and it has a bloated body. Its dark indigo skeleton is waxy. Beware its fire. Irung was associated with water, disease, and caverns. At time before time, Irung began wandering the depths of the world.
Stop laughing at the towering eyeless shrimp.
In the late spring of 211, Irung devoured a billy goat of the Tours of Fondling in lovely granite. It doesn't say how it died. It just died at one point.
Choked on a billy goat.
But it was still killing things in 2.
Are you sure it's not
Oh, there we go.
that one that died?
Oh, here we go.
It's kind of hard to line it up.
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Euchre Dragonfather was the prime fish, or the prime fish was Forgotten Beast. It was the only one of its kind, a gigantic blob composed of ash. It has 2 short tails, and it squirms and fidgets. Euchre was associated with water, thraldom, and caverns. In time before time.
Killed a lot of dwarves.
In the late spring of 53, the dwarf Domas Fleshstrike's lower lip was smashed by Euchre. So, in combat in Dwarf Fortress, it's incredibly detailed in the way it models damage. So you can bruise, dwarves can get bruised, they can lose an arm, they can lose a leg, and they can hypothetically survive these things, but it gets real difficult because the game doesn't necessarily tell you these things. It's just, oh, why is this dwarf demanding water? And that they usually only demand water when they're sick or needing to heal. So yeah, he killed a whole lot of dwarves. He routed the turquoise dagger of waxy fortification and destroyed ectoquakes. In late spring of 53, Euchre settled in ectoquakes, where he kind of lived for 101 years. In 154, the human cost amazed wanderers confronted Euchre. In 154, Euchre was shot and killed by the human cost amazed wanderers in ectoquakes.
Huh.
Yeah, and I mean, if we were to go into adventure mode and track down that human, we could hypothetically find, something that may have been made from the corpse of Euchre. Like, I don't know. The amount of detail that this game has is kind of incredible, and it does it all just kind of procedurally. And then, like I joked I think last week that Dwarf Fortress is the most unapologetic adaptation of Lord of the Rings, except that it never ever adapts Lord of the Rings directly. It just remakes it over and over and over again every time it's installed and every time its world generator is created,
Right.
or its world generator runs. And it's essentially like its mechanical underpinnings are you need to get a mine working and functioning, and then you just go as deep as you can and basically create the mines of Moria over and over and over again. You're creating those narrative beats, but in your own very dramatically different ways. And very much in the same way that Elbereth is frequently a thing that you can engrave or invoke in any other adaptation, or not even direct adaptation. Like Elbereth has taken on its own sort of shorthand for essentially fear, like a fear spell or something that will turn away, unholy monsters. Or in NetHack, for example, it's like almost everything except for certain humanoid monsters.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know what else to say about Dwarf Fortress. Like, I can say zillions of other things, but I think that's kind of I feel like at the very least I've shown like it's your own Moira simulator. It's Moira Simulator 2000 or whatever, but or Moria Simulator, sorry, 2000, and it just kind of keeps going, and they add new stuff it was about a year before they did an update this year, but they added some substantial things as far as I understood. Senior migrants can show up and be vampires. I think the miscarriage stuff is, I think, new, which is kind of intense, that you can just have this couple that will show up and have this own personal tragedy, and that will completely destroy them. I mean, again, mismanagement on my part probably didn't help them any, but I don't know. Harrison, did you have anything you wanted to...
I don't know. I'm kind of hoping... I'm looking at the bottom of that legend phone, and I'm hoping the XML dump gets finished soon. Because
there's a tool, I think, to drag that out anyways.
Nice.
There.
That'd be something a lot of fun, just like export a world, like just generate a bunch of worlds, export them in, and do something like, I don't know. I know there's already dwarffortress.txt on Twitter, but it'd be fun to automate that in some fashion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that wouldn't be too hard to do, I don't think.
Yeah. Expand the Moria make infinite Moria Twitters.
That would be great.
All right.
Again, thank you so much for riding shotgun with me, Harrison. I know I was ranting an awful lot, but I'll see if I can find some. Like there are some guides out there that will kind of walk you through some of that stuff. And once you kind of get your head around, I think it took me about a weekend, not like consecutive hours, but like a weekend where I would sit down for a few hours and kind of poke at it, and then it helps to have a guide. Like, do this, then this, then this, then this. And it just, at the very least, it kind of gives you some keyboard shortcuts and will tell you what you need to build and what you need to have to embark with. And then once you kind of have a self-sufficient fortress, you feel like you have a better handle on it, even though like there's a lot more depth there. Like, I don't understand how to make pumps yet, but that's my next thing that I want to learn how to do.
Nice. I think I'm just gonna. I can feel this game drawing me in already. This is exactly why I hadn't played it yet. It's because I knew what would happen. Knew exactly what would happen.
Well, we'll give it a couple weeks, and I mean, there's some other stuff that I want to take a look at in subsequent episodes. But I definitely want to come back, and I have not even touched adventure mode, mostly for the same reasons that you haven't touched Dwarf Fortress proper, because I'm afraid. But I want to get a good solid fortress done, like where it works, and then I want to destroy it, and then I want to come back as an adventurer and try to take out that whatever fell beasts take over my fortress, and then loot whatever crazy stuff I have in there.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, have a good night, everyone.
Yeah. Another long one, and we'll probably take next week off, I think.
Probably.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.